My F350's done some weird stuff. Last year, the steering wheel would move on its own, and going around corners felt like I was on ice. And after fixing a no-start issue, with an entirely fresh new battery cable setup, we finally got the truck to turn back on. Oh yeah! But then, it wouldn't turn back off. The motor was running, and so was still the starter motor. It kept spinning and spinning as the engine was running. In a panic, I turned the key to the off position, but what didn't turn off was the starter. In a frenzy, I grabbed a traffic cone that I found in the bed and tried hitting the starter, but it did nothing. Shocking. Dad heard me struggling as I scurried to remove the battery terminals, those heavy-duty ones that I just installed. Dad grabbed a wrench, loosened the cables, and eventually the starter slowed to a halt, sizzling and smoking. We're gonna figure out the problem with the starter.
Oh yeah, lovely.
Before it damages my engine or catches my truck on fire, and fix the problems with the ABS system, and have it all done in 2 days before we get absolutely dumped on with snow. Let's go. With the positive battery cables all on loosely, I attempted to start the truck. And even though it wasn't the most graceful startup, it did start, and the starter did turn off, which means I can get the truck up closer to the garage and tools to pull out the starter. Off come the positive terminals by hand, and once I find the correct size socket, off come the negatives. And when we get a look down at the starter, I notice
It doesn't look right.
now it's time to pull the starter. I should be getting pretty good at, seeing as though I just pulled it off a few days ago. Regardless if this is the problem, which it most likely is, it's coming out and getting replaced. I don't trust it. After cranking for 3 minutes straight, it's starting to smoke. Once I remove the 2 bottom bolts and pesky bolt at the very top that you can't see, I remove the wires, and she's out.
Starter's out. Again. Getting real good at this. In, out, in, out.
And with it out right by my face, I noticed thing smells cooked. All right, the new starter is here. Sure looks like it. Let's throw it in the truck. The unit I got is, well, the same one that came out of the truck, because it's a warranty replacement. I know a lot of you guys said to upgrade the starter, but since this was a warranty replacement, it was kind of free. And I think you'll be impressed with how this thing cranks up when we're done. So I climbed under the truck, connected our fresh new signal wire to the starter, tightened the bottom 2 mounting bolts, and struggled immensely once again with one up top. Then tightened on the shiny new power cable. And she's all in. If you're looking for a way to spice up your next starter install in the 7.3, do it in freaking soggy cardboard when it's winter. It's starting to get real windy.
Oh yeah, lovely. Just lovely.
Enough whining. I put back on the battery cables lightly. I'm gonna try to start the truck. I didn't even tighten the terminals. I'm expecting that I'll have to run out here and rip them off in case the starter doesn't shut off again, which I hope it does not do. I hope it turns off, is what I mean. I hope it turns off. Time to climb in and see what happens. Let's get ready to run. It started so fast. The terminals are not tightened down. That was wild. With the new starter and new battery cables, this thing spins up like a brand new diesel. And because I still didn't entirely trust it, I left the positive terminals loose as I drove the truck for a few days, in case I had to sprint up there and rip them off, in case the starter wasn't our issue. But there's still some things to sort out I've been putting off for months. All right, finally, now that the truck actually turns on and then it actually turns off, now we can take care of another issue that has been, well, it's been hanging around for a little bit. And now that it's snowing, I'd like to get it sorted out. And I'd like to sort it out so that it doesn't cause other issues, because we have enough of those. And that, of course, is this. And my light came on. It seems like it was after I did something with the wheels off. The ABS light comes on, of course, when there's an issue with the anti-lock braking system. It can be triggered by simple stuff like low brake fluid or worn brake pads, or a bit more serious problems like broken wheel speed sensors, a failing ABS hydraulic pump, or some damage in the wiring somewhere in the brake system. And as I've learned the hard way in the past, start with the basics and the simple stuff first. Brake pads? Look good, plenty of meat. Brake fluid? Just below max, so we're good there. And then, fuses. There's fuse 14 under the hood for the ABS. That one's fine. And on the inside, fuse 24 for the ABS module too. And both are fine. Now, unfortunately in this case, normally I'd kind of be crap out of luck after checking the brake fluid and making sure all the wires around the ABS pump visually look okay. I'd kind of be stumped. I do have the small scanner you guys have seen me use, but it only scans the engine computer system. So in this case, it's about as useless as an inflatable dartboard. Luckily, I've upgraded my scanner. A full 4-system scan tool. This one's the X-Tool D5S. It can scan 4 systems, including the ABS, the engine computer, transmission computer, ABS module, and the SRS, or the safety restraint system. I'll include a link for it down below. This thing's gonna help us so much in future repairs. 15 essential maintenance functions are built in, so we can clear engine trouble codes, tranny codes, reset oil lights, reset the DPF system. Luckily, we don't have that. We can reset tire pressure monitors, bleed the ABS pump from here, code injectors, EGR relearn, but this is wild what we can do for the cost. There's a special 15% off code down below for you guys to use. And there's 2 ways that we can check and see what our ABS problem is. I'm gonna show them both to you because one of them is pretty freaking cool actually. So all we're gonna do first, turn the ignition on, grab our scanner, just plug this in. We're gonna go to diagnosis because we're trying to diagnose a problem. Then Ford, manual selection, select my truck specs. That looks good to me. Now here's where I can select what system I want this thing to scan. In my case, the ABS light is the only one on, so I'll go to system selection, then we'll go to ABS module, then live data. This is pretty neat. And this shows us everything that the truck is doing live. What we're looking for is wheel speed sensors to get their readings. Here we've got the fronts. So they're both reading 4.8 kilometers an hour. I'm not sure why we're standing still, but when we turn the truck on, man, does it start good with those new cables and that new starter in there. It's so quick. Now we can start to drive backwards. And as we're moving, you can see the right front sensor's reading around 27, but the left is still 4.8, meaning that it's not reading. Without having to drive or even turn the truck on, we can also go into the ABS module, read DTC, which stands for data trouble codes. And right there straight away tells us that the left front wheel speed sensor is bad. And that's what's triggering our ABS light. And later on that afternoon, got the new one, let's throw it in. I'm replacing the wheel speed sensor with the Motorcraft OEM one. And even though it's not the cheapest, this isn't the easiest task in the world to change. Not that it's difficult, there's just a little digging involved. So up in the air she goes, and off comes the driver's side tire. Our code read left wheel speed sensor, and that was the one that wasn't outputting a wheel speed. Left and right on a car can be confusing, but it's all based on the perspective when sitting in the car. So left is our driver's side. Off comes the bore wheel spacer, then the 2 bolts come off holding on the caliper. After that, we can use a screwdriver to pry back the piston and remove the caliper. We can tuck that up out of the way and make sure not to hang it from the brake line. I'll just rest it here on the leaf spring. Now we're just removing the brake pads and the small 2 springs that keep tension on them. Next, the 2 big bolts holding on the caliper bracket can come off. These things are tight. I try first with a ratchet and a pipe, but then call in the bigger guns. With those removed, the caliper bracket comes off, which means so can the rotor. But can and will are 2 different things. This thing is stuck. I try hitting it with my purse, to no avail. Then a block of wood, to still no avail. Then a different block of wood, which didn't get it. Then the other piece of wood again, and wham, she comes off.
What a pain. Why must you be so difficult?
But here's what we came for. Little tiny thing down there. Stinks because if it was any bit further back, we wouldn't have had to remove all of that to get to it. Based on the shape that everything else has been in, I'm going to give that bolt holding it on a squeeze of PB. Then lightly tap in a hex socket, because if this thing strips out on me, it's bad news. Thankfully, the bolt holding on the sensor comes out. Next, I can remove the small bolt holding the harness to the knuckle. Now with a little prying, we can lift up the sensor. Well, most of the sensor. Now the crappy thing is, you can see here all this copper wire. The plastic is still stuck in that hole. So the new sensor isn't gonna fit in that hole with all that crap in there. That's the cap for here. You can see the blue where it broke off, it's stuck in there. So now we gotta get that out. I tried prying it out with a screwdriver, which doesn't work. This plastic's super brittle. It just keeps chipping out. So I resort to using a small pick and picking it out piece by piece. A tedious task until finally I get a big chunk, and 20 minutes later, finally, it's all out. That sucked. With that out of the way, I can trace the harness up to find the connector and unplug it. And here's our new wheel speed sensor. I went with an OEM one because even though it's more money, I don't want to be doing this job again soon, especially with how warm it is out. It was around 70 bucks on Amazon and Rock Auto and 100 at the store. I feel better putting in OEM though, and we install it first by ensuring no pieces are left over from the old sensor in its mounting spot. Next, again, find the pigtail for the harness, plug in the new sensor to it, route the wire down, and push the sensor into its spot. Now we can tighten down the small bolt that holds it on, as well as the bolt that holds the wire to the knuckle. Then route the rest of the wire up out of the way so it doesn't get snagged on anything. I'll clip it into its spot on the inner fender later with some zip ties. Now the new sensor's in and completely hooked up, therefore we can reassemble the brakes. We put everything on: the rotor, the bore spacer, the caliper mounting bracket, and the pads, followed by the caliper itself, torque it all down, before feeling a pinch under my left butt cheek and realizing that I didn't put on the clips on the brake pads. God, do I hate myself. So, Uno reverse card. The caliper comes back off, I put on the clip spring things, then put back on the caliper and torque everything down once again. Now the sensor is fully installed, but did it clear our light off the dash? It'd help if I turned on the key. Booyah! Boy, it's gotten windy and not warm. Now while I've got the truck up, I'm gonna rotate the tires because I was supposed to do that when I did the oil change, but then everything snowballed into such a mess. But I wanna make sure I do it now to keep up with the perfect maintenance schedule that I've kept with this thing. Glad it's treated me so well because of it. Rotating tires is one of the easiest things you can do to extend the life of your tires. Well, not the easiest when they're 8-lug wheels and large, but at just under $400 a tire, I've got to do what I can to make them last. I find it easiest to just jack the entire truck up, put it on stands, and pull all 4 wheels at the same time. And here's how I rotate them and where each tire goes. It's easier to show you guys than explain. But the good news is,
Everything looks like it's wearing evenly, which is good. Very good. These are expensive.
glad to know all of this isn't for nothing. But before I mount the wheels up in their new positions, I'm gonna grease all the fittings behind there. The tie rod ends, ball joints, U-joints, and whatever else has a nipple on it. I saw your guys' comments on the last video about doing something to the underside of this thing, and I'm gonna plan on doing that soon. It's in the works. With all the fittings greased, I can mount back up the wheels. And the next day, when it's not much warmer, I can torque them down and reinstall the center caps. Finally, the starter's starting and turning off. Tires are rotated, irritating ABS lights wiped off the dash. Our ABS system is working, just in time for us to go play in the snow. Thank you all very much for watching. If you're not yet subscribed, I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by my birthday in August. So that would be the perfect time to go below and click that button. I appreciate you guys so much. We'll see you in the next one. Happy motoring.
I really hate that kid.